You feel pain like no other pain, and you know that in your life it's going to be very difficult to...
Prince William had entered the palace council expecting a difficult discussion. He did not expect his mother's brother to stand, place a sealed file before Camilla, and name a private crown agreement that William had never been told existed. Within moments, the future king's composure cracked. Charles Spencer did not soften his accusation. Camilla did not immediately deny it, and the silence that followed became more devastating than any shouted confession. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The closed door changed everything. William sat opposite King Charles as a restricted palace council session began. The gathering mattered because William believed transition planning should prepare him for the crown, not build private influence around him. Household authority meant control over senior staff and access, while succession planning concerned how royal duties would pass to the next sovereign. Spencer rose. He pushed the sealed file toward the queen consort and said she had signed a secret crown continuity pact. The pact, a private agreement meant to guide a change of monarch, granted her advisory access to succession planning, senior palace appointments, and transition briefings during the first year of William's future reign without his approval. William stared at the document. He asked his uncle to repeat the final clause. Spencer did. The future king lowered his head, as one brutal thought settled over him. Another arrangement had been built without him. Camilla remained seated, but her grip tightened around the chair. She looked toward Charles. The king watched her face and said nothing. That silence sharpened Spencer's anger, because Diana's brother believed William was again discovering a family secret publicly. Then Spencer placed a second paper beside the pact. He explained that the page came from an archival account attached to the agreement and carried 3 sets of initials. Charles saw one set and changed instantly. The monarch's jaw tightened. William noticed. Camilla noticed too. Nobody explained why. William pushed his chair back. He reminded them he had asked whether anything concerning his succession was being hidden from him. The prince looked at his father, then at Camilla. He wanted a clear answer. None came. His composure broke. Spencer stopped him before he reached the door. His uncle said the pact had not begun with Camilla's signature. A private gathering months earlier had started everything, and one person in that room already knew the truth. William thought he had just discovered Camilla's secret, but the faces around that table revealed something worse. The pact had a history, and every person in the room carried a different reason to fear it. The argument was never only about a document. For William, it touched the deepest wound of his adult life. The fear that decisions were still being made around him rather than with him. For Camilla, the pact represented survival inside a family that had never fully forgotten its past. For Charles, it threatened the fragile peace he had spent years protecting. And for Diana's brother, silence had already cost too much once before. William left the council room without looking back. The future king had spent years preparing for duty, learning how succession would eventually transfer the crown and its responsibilities to him. Yet he still feared old palace alliances might survive around his reign. That fear mattered because hidden loyalties could shape who briefed him, who advised him, and who remained close when he finally held full authority. In a quiet corridor, he pressed both hands against a table and told Charles Spencer, "I needed truth, not protection through secrecy." Spencer quietly absorbed the words in silence. Diana's brother had entered the dispute as family, not as a constitutional figure with formal royal power. He remembered how hidden conversations had once isolated his sister, and he had convinced himself that exposing the pact would protect her son. Yet William's anger told him something harsher. The confrontation had reopened the very wound he wanted to shield. The prince asked why his uncle had waited until the council meeting. Spencer admitted he wanted witnesses because he feared the file might otherwise disappear into private handling. Camilla remained alone until Charles entered. She asked whether he truly believed she had plotted against William. The king hesitated. That single pause cut deeper than accusation. The queen consort then explained that the pact had been presented to her as an emergency continuity framework, a plan designed to stop household operations from collapsing during a future change of monarch. She insisted she had never asked for authority over the prince. William listened when Spencer later described one clause from the documented copy. The wording required Camilla to be consulted before certain senior advisors could be removed, giving her influence over people the future king might wish to dismiss. That was far more than continuity. It reached into his control. The prince looked directly at his uncle and asked, "Who first put this pact on the table?" Spencer answered with a date, a Windsor location, and the name of a private continuity ceremony nobody expected to hear. The pact had wounded 4 people for 4 different reasons. But its true danger could only be understood by returning to the evening, when one quiet royal ceremony became the point of no return. Months before the council confrontation, there had been no shouting, no public scandal, and no dramatic announcement. There was only a Windsor gathering, a shortened guest list, and one conversation held after the ceremonial doors had closed. William left that evening believing the matter concerned transition planning. Camilla remained behind. By midnight, a draft framework existed. That evening would later become the exact moment everyone wished they had questioned sooner. William trusted the evening because nothing felt dangerous. Charles sat nearby. Camilla remained composed, and household custodians reviewed emergency royal protocols. Those custodians were officials responsible for protecting royal duties during sudden change. The continuity ceremony mattered because it examined how staff, access, and ceremonial responsibilities would survive a future transition. The prince believed he was being prepared, not bypassed. William left before the administrative session. He had been told the remaining discussion concerned staff retention and ceremonial scheduling, while Camilla stayed because her household responsibilities overlapped with those decisions. The future king accepted that explanation. The queen consort did not call him back. Charles did not stop him. That silence mattered later. Then 10:40 arrived. Camilla sat inside Windsor's oak anteroom when a senior transition custodian warned her that William could remove an entire layer of experienced advisors after becoming king. The warning was preserved in a documented meeting account attached to the draft. She answered, "Then continuity must be written down before emotion decides everything." The words changed the room. Within minutes, discussion moved from preparation to written protection, and the structure of the Crown Continuity Pact began. Charles entered later and found Camilla reading the early draft. She told the king she feared becoming a symbol to be erased, rather than a person allowed to withdraw with dignity. He took her hand. The monarch heard the fear in her voice, yet he never told William what had begun. Weeks later, William asked his father directly whether transition agreements were being prepared without him. Charles replied that nothing was being designed to diminish his future authority. The answer was technically true. It also avoided the unfinished pact. Spencer later traced the first draft through a personal archival review. Diana's brother found that one custodian had placed a copy inside a private family file after fearing the wording crossed from continuity into influence. The documented account gave him the sentence, the time, and the room. Camilla had ignited the pact. Charles had known enough to question it. William had been kept outside. The crisis was no longer about whether the pact existed. It was about what Camilla meant when she asked for continuity, and whether William would believe her when she finally answered him face to face. When the council reconvened, Charles Spencer did not sit down. William returned pale but controlled, while Camilla waited with the document closed before her. Then Diana's brother moved his chair aside, turned directly toward the queen, and delivered the sentence that shattered every remaining layer of royal restraint. "Do not explain this to the council. Look at him and answer." For the first time, the pact became painfully personal. Spencer refused to let formal procedure take control again. Palace aides were ready to summarize the agreement, but he insisted the confrontation remain between the people whose trust had been damaged. The council, a private meeting where senior royal matters were discussed, suddenly felt useless because technical wording could not explain why William had been excluded. The prince crossed the room and sat opposite Camilla instead of beside Charles. The king noticed immediately. His son had created distance from both of them. Spencer pushed the sealed file toward Camilla. He asked whether she believed William was too emotionally compromised to control his own future household. The queen consort looked directly at the future king. "No," she said. "I believed you might remove everyone connected to a life you wanted to leave behind." William's expression changed. His voice broke as he asked one question. "Everyone? Did you mean yourself?" Camilla did not hide behind the pact. She admitted her fear had been personal. The queen believed William might one day erase her remaining royal role before she could step away with dignity. The prince listened, but the confession only deepened his pain. He had spent years proving he could separate private emotion from duty, yet she had built protection around the fear that he could not. Spencer unfolded a handwritten note preserved in the documented Windsor account. Diana's brother read Camilla's words about continuity being written down before emotion decides everything. William immediately understood who that word had described: his future judgment, his grief, his past. Camilla admitted the wording had been wrong, but she refused to apologize for fearing exclusion. Then she disclosed, through her own recorded account of the Windsor discussion, that Charles had seen the early draft. The king had not destroyed it. He had asked for one clause to be softened. William slowly turned toward his father. Charles did not look away. The pact was no longer Camilla's secret alone. Spencer had forced Camilla to confess her fear, but one glance from William made it clear the deepest reckoning was moving toward the man who had possessed the power to end the pact before it ever reached a signature. Kings are often judged by the orders they give. Charles was now being judged by the order he never gave. The Crown Continuity Pact could not alter succession, remove William's future sovereignty, or legally bind a reigning king against his will. But it could shape the people surrounding a transition, and Charles had known enough to stop it. Instead, he had tried to soften the language. In doing so, he protected peace for one night, and created a far greater betrayal. Charles knew the council now understood the pact's limits. It could not command William once he became king, but it created a consultation mechanism, a formal process requiring certain people to be heard before decisions were made. Camilla could receive transition briefings and be consulted before named senior advisors were retained or removed. That mattered, because the people surrounding a new sovereign could shape information, access, and trust during the first fragile months of a reign. The king removed his glasses and folded them carefully. He admitted he had seen enough of the draft to stop it. Charles said he feared telling William because every discussion involving Camilla and future authority became personal too quickly. The monarch had convinced himself that softening the pact would prevent another family rupture. He had chosen quiet compromise over a painful confrontation. William barely raised his voice. The prince told his father he had not prevented the rupture. He had delayed it until the betrayal became larger. The calmness in his words frightened Charles more than anger. The king looked at his son and realized William was no longer asking why the pact existed. He was judging why his father had allowed it to survive. Then Charles disclosed the detail preserved in his own documented review notes. He had personally demanded the removal of a clause guaranteeing Camilla a permanent place at private sovereign briefings, the confidential meetings where a monarch receives sensitive advice. Yet he had allowed the one-year advisory provision to remain. Camilla turned toward him. The queen consort had believed her husband defended the pact. Now she learned he had quietly weakened the protections she thought he supported. Charles tried to explain that he was preparing the agreement for possible rejection. She understood something colder. Even he had doubted it. William asked for the signed version. Spencer placed it before him. The future king did not tear it apart. He simply lifted the file and requested 1 hour alone. Camilla watched him leave and feared the silence more than fury. Charles had finally admitted where his power ended and his fear began, but William was now holding the pact himself, and the next move would reveal whether heartbreak had hardened into judgment. William did not shout when he returned. That was what unsettled everyone. He carried the pact beneath one arm, entered the council chamber, and placed it in the center of the table with almost painful care. Camilla searched his expression for anger. Charles searched for forgiveness. Spencer searched for signs that his intervention had caused more damage than he intended. Then the prince announced 3 immediate decisions, and the old balance inside the royal family began to collapse. William spoke first about his future reign. He said no private framework concerning the crown he might one day inherit would be recognized without his direct participation. Transition documents, meaning plans designed to guide duties and staff during a change of monarch, would now be reviewed with him present whenever they contained advisory powers. The rule mattered because hidden influence could shape his first decisions before he had even taken them. It also mattered because trust, once broken around succession, could poison every advisor standing beside him. The prince then ordered the Crown Continuity Pact suspended from internal planning. He did not destroy it. William wanted every clause traced and every person involved in the drafting identified before judgment became final. Camilla heard that her transition access was suspended and slowly reached into her handbag. The Queen Consort removed a small council access card, placed it beside the pact, and said, "I will not force you to remove me twice." Her hand trembled as she pulled it away. Charles reached toward the card but stopped. The king looked at Camilla with immediate regret, yet she refused to meet his eyes. She felt exposed by her husband, who had weakened the pact in secret, and by William, who now controlled whether any part of it survived. The monarch wanted to speak. He could find no words strong enough. William's third decision turned toward Charles Spencer. The future king ordered Diana's brother to surrender his private copy and provide a full documented account of how he obtained it. Spencer stared at him. The prince made his position clear. One act of secrecy would not be excused simply because it exposed another. Spencer agreed. Then he disclosed one final detail from the archival chain. A note written after the Windsor meeting recorded that Camilla herself had questioned the pact's most aggressive clause. William went still. The prince looked at her differently. He asked Camilla to meet him alone that evening. No Charles. No Spencer. No counsel. The pact had already cost Camilla her access, and Charles his son's trust. But William's private invitation created one final possibility. The truth might sound different when spoken without an audience. There were no advisors in the room, no sealed files, no king seated between them. William arrived first and remained standing until Camilla entered alone. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the prince asked a question far simpler than anything raised before the council. "Were you afraid of me?" Camilla's answer carried no constitutional language, no defense, and no polished royal restraint. "Yes," she said. And suddenly, the entire conflict changed shape. William chose a small Windsor sitting room because he wanted no Charles, no Spencer, and no courtiers between them. Courtiers were palace officials who normally helped manage royal business and communication, but tonight their absence mattered. The prince wanted one honest conversation. He told Camilla the pact had wounded him because it confirmed an old fear. People studied his grief and emotional history before trusting his judgment. That fear mattered because a future king could not lead confidently while wondering whether private protections were being built around assumptions about his pain. Camilla listened before answering. She admitted she believed William might one day look at every advisor connected to Charles's marriage and see only reminders of Diana. The Queen Consort feared becoming a symbol of old suffering before she had the chance to withdraw with dignity. She had not feared losing a throne. She had feared being erased from the final chapter of a life she had spent years trying to stabilize. William's eyes filled. He told her the secrecy had created the very reaction she feared. His mother had lived through conversations held beyond her reach, and the prince said he could not begin his own reign through the same pattern. Camilla lowered her voice. For the first time, she understood why the pact had struck him as more than political interference. Then Camilla disclosed, through the private handwritten objection she had sent after signing, that she challenged the clause covering senior advisor retention. The Queen admitted she never showed William the note, because she feared any approach would be seen as manipulation. William confirmed Charles Spencer's archival note supported her account. The documented record did not excuse the secret agreement, but it changed one crucial truth. The prince no longer believed Camilla had deliberately planned to control his crown. William offered one path forward. She would renounce every secret advisory guarantee before the full council. In return, he would state publicly that she had attempted to amend the pact before exposure. Camilla accepted without bargaining. For the first time, William and Camilla left a room understanding the same truth. But understanding could not erase what had happened, and the monarchy now had to confront the story beyond the palace walls. By morning, the palace's private crisis had escaped into public view. The details were incomplete, but the emotional image was irresistible. Diana's brother challenging Camilla before a council, while William broke beneath the weight of a hidden agreement concerning his future reign. Britain did not receive the full pact. It received something more powerful. A story about secrecy, inheritance, and an old family wound returning at the exact moment the monarchy was trying to look forward. Charles understood the danger before the first palace statement was released. Officials confirmed that an internal transition framework had been suspended and placed under review, meaning a private plan concerning the transfer of royal duties was no longer being used while its terms were examined. They refused to publish family documents or disclose the council discussion. That silence mattered because the public could see William's pain, but not the full reasons behind it. Worse for the king, attention quickly moved from Camilla's signature to his knowledge of the draft. William watched the first morning coverage alone. The prince remained still until one commentator compared his breakdown to Diana's isolation within royal life. He switched off the television and told an aide his mother's pain would not become entertainment inside his own crisis. The comparison cut deeply, because William had spent years trying to honor her without allowing grief to govern every decision. Camilla stayed behind closed doors, as Charles asked whether she wanted a stronger palace defense. The queen consort refused. She told the king that William deserved to have the truth heard before she received protection. Charles looked at her differently. For once, she was choosing exposure over silence. Outside Buckingham Palace, umbrellas crowded the barriers as one newspaper rose above the gathering. Its fictional front page screamed, "William's Tears. Diana's brother names secret crown pact." A broadcaster then described Spencer's sealed file as the document that forced an old royal wound into a new reign. The phrase spread quickly. Spencer heard it repeated and understood his confrontation had become larger than the pact itself. Then the palace announced a full council statement. Camilla would personally address the agreement. William would confirm his decision. Charles would accept responsibility for withholding knowledge of the draft. Spencer watched the final council assemble. Diana's brother noticed Camilla carried no papers. She had chosen to speak without a prepared defense. William already knew the verdict. The world had turned a private wound into a national symbol. But inside the palace, one final council meeting would decide whether secrecy ended in permanent division or in a painful act of accountability. The final council meeting began with no accusation. Camilla stood before William, Charles, and Diana's brother and placed her council access card on the table for a second time. Then she did what fear had prevented her from doing months earlier. She spoke plainly. She renounced every private advisory guarantee contained in the Crown Continuity Pact, admitted that secrecy had made her fear look like ambition, and accepted that William's future reign could not begin beneath an agreement he never approved. Camilla did not ask for sympathy. The queen consort formally gave up the pact, and the council permanently removed it from all transition planning. Transition planning meant the private preparations used to guide royal duties, staff, and access during a future change of monarch. No advisory guarantee survived. No protected consultation remained. No influence over staff retention continued. That mattered because William could no longer inherit a future shaped by agreements made before he entered the room. William then set a new principle. The prince said any framework affecting a future sovereign must include that person directly, provide written reasons, and never hide family decisions behind ceremonial language. His rule was simple because the wound had been complicated enough. Trust could not survive if truth arrived only after discovery. Charles lowered his head. The king admitted he had tried to protect Camilla while avoiding conflict with his son, but his silence had betrayed them both. He told William that withholding the draft had been his decision. The monarch accepted responsibility without asking for forgiveness. Spencer stepped forward next. Diana's brother handed over his private copy and apologized for exposing the pact in a way that caused William public pain. The future king listened, then embraced his uncle briefly. Truth had been necessary. The method had still wounded him. William finally turned toward Camilla. He said her fear did not excuse the pact, but her handwritten objection proved she had not been planning to seize his crown. The queen had made a different mistake. She had searched for protection through secrecy instead of trust. Then William picked up her surrendered access card. The prince placed it inside the closed pact file, shut the cover, and handed everything to the council secretary for permanent withdrawal. No humiliation, no revenge, just an ending. The breakdown had changed him. Camilla lost her secret guarantees. Charles accepted the cost of silence. Spencer exposed the truth and stepped back. William emerged wounded but clearer, determined to honor Diana not through vengeance, but by ending the family habit of hiding decisions until discovery forced confession. The secret pact was finished, the council had spoken, and William walked away with no hidden agreement governing his future. Only the painful certainty that his reign would begin where the old silence finally ended. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.